Flooding, bad smells, security worries, traffic that makes you want to scream, rent that makes no sense, and roads that test your car and your patience. If you're in Lagos, you already know these aren't just complaints, they are daily survival points. But today on Join Air, we spotlight the Eti Osa Local Government area, and we're not just venting, we're asking the real questions. We meet the Youth Party Chairmanship candidate for Eti Osa, Mr. Ayodele Adio. What has he done? What does he plan to do? You're tuning to Join Air, streaming live across social media right now and also live on 88.5 UFM. Let's get right into the conversation. All right, welcome, sir, to the conversation. Mr. Ayodele Adio, thank you for joining us this evening. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
We're glad that you're here. You're our very first guest on G on Air, so thank you so much.
An absolute pleasure. You're a star, so I have to be here.
Thank you so much. Let's get right into the conversation. We know that campaigning officially ends on Wednesday. Yeah. Now, in May, you were announced as the Youth Party candidate for the Eti Osa Local Government elections, and you are someone that a lot of people have been paying attention to. So talk to us a bit about what this experience has been like for you.
Well, it's been a mixed bag, topsy-turvy in some instances. I've had to learn new lessons about what the political terrain looks like. Some assumptions have been squashed, and it's been challenging in certain instances, and it's been incredibly rewarding in certain other instances. I mean, the look you see in the faces of people who can identify in your policy because they can see their struggle reflected in the policy that you're campaigning on. The joy that they see that somebody finally gets them, somebody listens to them, somebody understands their reality and is willing to go out of the way to solve some of the problems that they grapple with. I think that's one of the most rewarding experiences I've had on the campaign trail. I would say that I'm not really campaigning against the APC. I'm campaigning against apathy. There's a lot of voter apathy. A lot of people don't first know that there are elections coming up. Then there's a lot of others who don't just care anymore. They've just zoned out of politics. For them, it's just going to be same of same. Politicians are the same. And nothing is going to change. And you really and truly can't blame them. They've experienced stagnancy, at least in the last decade, given the fact that politicians have come into office on the wave of change, promises that were never kept.
I want to go back to a statement that you made. You said some assumptions were squashed. What assumptions, did people have? Maybe about you, about the Youth Party? We know that a lot of parties have had issues. The Youth Party has also had issues. I mean, established in 2018, but also almost got deregistered. So a lot of people are asking the question, why the Youth Party?
Let me just quickly touch on the assumption that I said was squashed. And that's the assumption that I had. I thought going into this campaign, a lot of educated, upwardly mobile, middle-income Nigerians would be extremely excited and would want to, throw in their support, for my candidacy. Finally, there's a candidate that is talking policy, that has clearly articulated, set of plans that he wants to implement. And I was extremely shocked that they are even the most disconnected. There's a lot of talk about wanting to change Nigeria, but very few are actually willing to get their skin in the game. That has been the rudest shock for me. They are a lot more disconnected than you can ever imagine. And that squashed my assumption about the amount of people who really want to get involved in the system to change, the system. But to your larger question about, Youth Party, when the Youth Party started in 2017, 2018, there was a lot of excitement because we wanted to open up the political space and create a level playing field where people can participate in the electoral process. There's a huge barrier to entry because the price of nomination forms are pegged at prices that are beyond the reach of many young people. And we wanted to put a platform where people can access, nomination forms. But from the very beginning, we were up against the establishment. They didn't like the name Youth Party. They were threatened by it. And they wanted us to go and change it. And we refused. So they refused to register us. And then we went to court. And then the court compelled INEC to register us as a political party. INEC did not obey that judgment until about a year later, 2 weeks to the end of the scheduled primary election. And so we went into the election, that's the 2019 election, a bit in a skeletal phase because a lot of people who wanted to run on our platform had to leave when INEC refused to register us. And so after the election, like you rightfully noted, INEC wanted to deregister us as a political party. In fact, they went ahead to do that with 72 other political parties. And then we took them to task. We went to the High Court. We won at the High Court. We went to the Court of Appeal. We won at the Court of Appeal. They went to the Supreme Court. And we won at the Supreme Court. It took us 5 years in that long legal battle with INEC, and we eventually emerged victorious sometime, in 2024 after the Supreme Court ruling. So it's been a journey of struggle, largely because INEC sort of took out the sting in our party, and that really, really slowed down our momentum, until last year when we sort of got our mojo back. And you said, why did I stick to the youth party? I mean, I stuck because this was one political party that took policy very seriously. It wasn't a party that was just focused on grabbing power or getting into office. It did the hard lifting of putting together policy documents and engaging the public in such policy documents as far back as 2000. We had the police reform document. We had the national security document that talked about how we could rejig the entire security architecture of the country. So I was excited to be a part of a platform that took policy very seriously, even though we were struggling at the time with INEC, even though funds weren't coming in because obviously people had left the party. We still stuck, to the very tenets of why we started this political party, to change this country one policy at a time and to create a level playing field where young people could participate.
Now, let's talk a bit about INEC. A ruling was given, and like you said, INEC did not follow that. And it felt like INEC removed the sting from the party.
Yes.
And so a worry that a lot of people have is if it takes 1 year for INEC to obey a ruling, what is the faith of the little Nigerian out there? So, because again, you worry that there is voter apathy. President Tinubu won the elections in 2023.
Yes.
We're a country of over 200 million people. We just have about 8 million votes, thereabout, that won him the election. Yeah. We don't even want to get into the local government numbers. Less than 1% are voting, depending on local government area. And it's pretty bad here in Eti Osa. Yeah. So the worry is people don't want to get involved because they believe that if we vote and we try to get our voices heard, and a ruling is given, will the bodies that are involved respect and obey? Are you not dissuaded by that thinking?
It seems like we're a child of struggle, right? Because it took 1 year for INEC to respect the court judgments that compel them to register us. Now, it's a problem because you have institutions that are created by law who flagrantly disregard judicial decisions and have no regard for the rule of law. And it's extremely worrying. When Nigerian people look at these hallowed institutions that they hold with so much regard and they revere, and these institutions disregard court orders or look the other way when there are judicial decisions, it sends a bitter pill down their throat and makes them disconnect from the entire system and lose hope in that electoral process in itself. But I can tell you for free, INEC is almost like an angel where the Lagos State Electoral Commission is, because we're talking about an institution that did not respect court judgments at the time. But if you look at the notice of elections of INEC, the way they set out to run their elections, the fact that they've integrated some level of technology and some level of transparency, none of that is existent with the Lagos State Electoral Commission. So we sort of are dealing with an electoral commission that is working towards a predetermined answer to sort of, midwife a process where the incumbent or the ruling political party gets into office. So it goes
back to the question I asked. You said a lot of important things, and we're eventually going to get to LISEC. But the question there is, why should people get out of their beds, leave their homes, leave their safety, the security of their homes to come out, to vote for the youth party? Why should they do that?
It's safe to say that, why should I waste my time to come out and vote? But I also tell people that I'm also on this ballot because I want to reform the local electoral process and to use my candidacy to spotlight and highlight, some of these corruption that happens in the electoral process at the local government level and to challenge these inefficiencies in court. At the moment, it's a process that already has a predetermined outcome, and except we sort of change and reform the electoral process locally, we're not going to inspire confidence in a lot of people to come out and vote. And like you said, it's scandalous that less than 1% of the voting population comes out for local government elections, because everybody seems to think that the names are already written on the pieces of paper. In fact, the candidates of the APC do not even help, because they threw parties immediately after their primary elections. Many are not even campaigning. You could take your entire studio and give many of them free publicity. They don't even want it. They don't even want you to know them, so that you don't even disturb them when they eventually get into office. They don't want you to know their name. They don't want you to know their face or their faces. They just want to quietly walk into office and do business as usual. I've been campaigning hard for the last 1 month at the very least, and they are not popular. Everywhere I go, they are not popular. People are tired of the status quo. They are tired of the incumbent. They want change. They are desperate for change. I can even tell you that for a fact, even supporters or long-time supporters of these parties in local communities are even tired of their own political party and wish that there is some sort of political tsunami that pushes them out of office so that they can have a party that looks their way. Because what has happened over the years is that local governments have been turned into family affairs. So it's an APC affair. And the juice, as it were, from the local government revenue is only used, for party leaders, the children of party leaders, for the political leaders. Very, very little, gets to the larger community. And people are frustrated by this. Why should you have a city that every time it rains, everywhere floods? Why should you have a city where people are struggling or living with piles of dirt because local governments are incompetent or incapable of collecting waste? Why do we have this brazen open defecation in our local government? Because principally or primarily, local governments are not investing in public toilets. So the very basics are even not happening in one of, arguably, the richest and most economical viable local government in all of Nigeria. Then imagine what happens, in every other place, in Lagos State.
All right. So let's get right into the meat of the conversation, right? Your background is in the media. So I knew that inviting you here, you would have a lot of great words to say. When you say you are bringing a tsunami, people are asking for that. But people feel like, sometimes it's a lot of talk, not backed up with action. For example, the Agungi axis, it's called the Red Sea, it's called all sorts of names. And it's almost like people have agreed that this situation cannot be solved. So when a politician comes into office and says, I want to solve the situation, the question is, how do you intend to solve this situation that has been wrong for many, many, many years? So what are your plans for Eti Osa, and how do you intend, to implement these plans?
I've put together an economic agenda that I call the Rice Plan, that I believe will create 15,000 jobs in Eti Osa, that will bring down insecurity, that will make our environment a lot more resilient, and that will improve tourism activities in this local government.
All right.
And RISE, is just a simple acronym for Recycle Waste to Wealth, Invest in Human Capital Development, S for Strengthening Tourism, and E for Empowering Communities. Now, the first and most critical is the environment. And, like you rightfully said, we cannot accept an environment where we believe that every time it rains, everywhere has to flood. 1. 2, we cannot accept an environment where we have to live without dirt, especially for low-income communities, because theirs is almost like double jeopardy. The waste collection is not only inefficient, but because they are charged at about the same rates that you charge, high-income communities, and they cannot afford those rates, what then happens is that they are punished to live with their waste. So it's almost being punished for being poor. And, it's sort of like a vicious cycle, because the more they live with those waste, the more there's a prevalence of typhoid fever. And the poor healthcare system doesn't help. And so they are completely left behind. For the environmental problem, I believe that a grand recycling program that translates this huge amount of waste that we generate in this local government to wealth is the solution. We generate, for instance, 75 tons of food waste in this local government every day. Now, that waste is enough, and there's scientific evidence to back this, to power 10,000 homes with electricity. Now, you'll be wondering over the top of your head that why should I be talking about such an esoteric idea that is not practicable to implement in a place like Lagos? But the truth is, 50% of the electricity generated in a place like Denmark is from waste. 40 million homes in rural China is powered by food waste that is converted to biogas. 7% of the energy generated in Germany is from food waste. So the technology has been mainstreamed, the technology is available, and investors are seeking opportunities where they can come in and make a kill from. So all we're simply going to do in Eti Osa Local Government is to formalize the process upon which we can attract these investors into this local government to convert this huge amount of food waste that we're piling on every day. But here's the beautiful thing about it. These things are already happening in silos. I attended an event 3 weeks ago where somebody was testing the technology of converting food waste into energy. And we saw them powering and recharging phones here in Lagos. You already have people in Lagos who are turning abandoned tires, into tiles that you can use to tile your roads. So all of these things are already happening in silos in Lagos. What we then need to do is to aggregate them, to formalize them, and provide the environment where it is properly coordinated such that the collection points become these marketplaces where are the centers where these waste are generated the most. So they do not have to bear the burden of where to dispose of this waste. These people collect them, for them. And that's one part of it. The second is that we must implement an efficient waste management system.
Right.
The basics of simply collecting and sorting and disposing waste. Those basics, we have to do that. And we're going to do that by employing or setting up an environmental corps where we would hire about 5,000 people in different departments, basically. There's a department for education that will educate people how to separate their waste, why they need to keep their environment clean. There's another that will be responsible for clearing the drains. There'll be another that will be responsible for collecting these waste efficiently. And to that extent, we want to integrate these informal waste collectors and empower them with the resources that they need to collect these things efficiently. The second and one of the most important part is also investing in human capital development. Eti Osa is, on the one side, a huge construction site where buildings are going up every day. So people need plumbers, people need electricians, people need carpenters. Most of the people doing your POPs, most of the people doing your tiles, most of the quality painting that you see are from young men who come from Togo. And they're taking all of these jobs because our people are not properly trained and are not properly skilled. And because over time, they have not been remunerated enough to develop a passion for these skills. So what we're going to do is to set up a training program and not the typical kind of 2-week skills acquisition programs that happen. These are standardized programs where they'll be certified and become proper blue-collar workers and can earn above a minimum wage for rendering their services in the local government. And on the other side, I'm going to invest in creative hubs where young people can come into studios and they have access to digital editing tools, they have access to cameras, they have access to training and mentoring. But more importantly, I'm going to set aside a 5 billion naira fund where people who have tested their creative venture and is market ready, they would have access to the funding that they require to launch whatever endeavor that they want, and keep their dreams alive. So, these are some of the things that, I believe that we can achieve in the shortest period of time, because the truth is, these are not magical things. They are basic when you have a commitment to the people and you are accountable to them, and there's some sort of social accountability mechanism where you make a promise to your people and they hold you to account to deliver those promises that you make. So the things that I'm saying are practical and deliverable in the first 2 years when I get into office.
We have a question here from someone on Facebook. Ola from Agungi says, please sir, like Jay rightly said, we are so used to plenty English and unmet expectations year in, year out with no action. Jay mentioned a solid point about Agungi. I live there. It has been crazy that place has been so flooded for many years and the government hasn't done anything about it. How can you really prove that you'll be different? How can I hold you accountable? We are suffering in Agungi. So this is a specific question about Agungi.
You see, the local government doesn't have the kind of budget to solve those kinds of problems, because there are structural issues that you need to deal with to be able to solve those problems. For instance, there has to be a statewide wetland policy that has to be stuck to at a state level. We have to criminalize, certain kinds of dredging without environmental impact assessments. We have to invest in building water parks across the city so that water can find its level across many places. We also have to invest in dikes that stop the huge flow of water, and these huge pumps that pump out waters in scale. Now, these are huge projects that have to be undertaken by the state government and in some collaboration with local government. But I can tell you what local governments can do in this very instance. Now, what we can do is to ensure that we allow the free flow of our drainages across the local government, and that will reduce the impact of this flooding. But more importantly, we are also going to, as a local government, provide emergency services that never exist even at a state or federal level. When people experience, this level, of flooding in Lagos, where certain people are stranded, they can't move past the water. Sometimes, area boys quickly make a buck or two from it. They carry you on their back. They charge 200 naira to move you from point A to point B. We are going to set up an emergency response at a local government level that will serve the people in times of distress. And when these floodings happen, we'll be there to help children get to school. We'll be there to help cars that are stuck in the mud, to haul them out of those places. That's the list that we can do when these things happen. But in terms of actual implementation, the list that we can do is to ensure that we put together a system where the drains are properly cleared, where our gutters are not blocked, and our waste management system is so efficient and so optimal that it reduces the risks of these kinds of flooding, and hope that the state government comes through on the larger projects.
The question that is on my mind is, so many things have been said, and it's fantastic to hear the plans that you have, the RISE plan, right?
Yeah, it's the RISE plan.
Where is the money going to come from? I'm going to go to my Yoruba heritage and say, money is necessary to move things. So plans are fantastic, but where's this money going to come from?
And I'll respond to you in your Yoruba heritage and say, Kulakai. You've put your fingers right on the button. But let me quickly say this. Eti Osa Local Government does an average of between 1.6 billion to sometimes 2.2 billion naira monthly. And this is outside internally generated revenue, which on a very good day, could run as much as between 800 million to 1 billion naira a month. So you're looking at a local government that does, at the very least, 3 billion in revenue monthly. Not just that there is enough money to fund some of the ambitious projects that I am proposing, I'm also going to be leveraging on public-private partnerships to drive some of these projects that I'm talking about. Because we will lead with credibility, we'll be able to access millions of dollars from development institutions across the world who will be happy to partner with our local government to support in many of these projects that we talk about environmentally. We can fund quality primary education in this local government. Primary education that can improve classroom experience or classroom outcomes, that can build the capacity of primary school teachers, and can also support every teacher that teaches in a public primary school in Eti Osa would have free transportation to and from work in this local government. It is possible because Adeniji Alele did it 3-4 decades ago when he was chairman of Lagos Island local government, right? So these are things that I believe that we're going to use the funds of our people to work for them. And with accountability and transparency, you'll see that we have more than enough to be able to drive some of these projects that I talk about. I'm not building skyscrapers. I'm not buying yachts. I'm not buying brand new SUVs to power my advisors and cabinet members. Absolutely not. What we're going to use the monies for are to fund some of these projects that we have proposed and to improve the lives and living conditions of our people in this local government.
This question is one that, I think every person involved in politics should be able to answer. It's expected that politicians will make promises, but we've seen a lot of people that people trusted in get into office, get into power, and don't deliver on their promises. Because you've mentioned Eti Osa generates a lot of money, so people question that when you see money, when you see money,
I like that
when you
expression.
see
When you
money,
see money.
a lot of your promises can change.
Yeah.
So what is the confidence that we have in Mr. Ayodele Adio if you are voted in, that when the funds are given to you, the funds will be used for what they will be used for?
First and foremost, I am going to set up a quarterly town hall meeting across every ward when I eventually become chairman. And that town hall meeting is for people in that community or in that ward to engage the chairman of their local government, to sort of review performances, to talk about the problems that they have in their local government, and to sort of keep their chairman in check. And that way, we can build some sort of, social accountability mechanism with the people who have elected us into office. But to your larger question, which is, how do people trust that when these monies start to move on my table, I wouldn't want to dip my hands in the cookie jar? Now, the reality is this. There's nothing to say to prove to you that this will not be the case, given, like you rightfully mentioned, experience have sort of placed Nigerians in the positions where they have become cynical.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at my antecedents over the years, you will see that I have not been one that's been drawn to the glitz and to glamour. I have been one who have stayed on the issues that transforms society. So if you look at the organizations that I support, organizations that I'm on their board, it's always been people driven. It's always been people centric. And that for me should be enough supporting evidence that your monies will not go missing into agbadas and into pockets. Those monies will actually be used for the benefits, of the people. Voters must be able to find their power. And what I mean is this. If this man lied to you, vote him out and vote me in. If I lie to you, vote me out and vote somebody else in. What that does over time is that sends a signal to politicians that the people have woken up to the power that they have to vote in or vote out the kind of people that they want. And that becomes the beginning of our democracy.
Let's be honest, the APC has the power in Lagos State as it is, right, when it comes to this position. So if they offer you, we like what you're saying, we like your charisma, we like the words, we want to offer you the chairmanship position of Eti Osa, would you leave the Youth Party today and take that offer?
Well, it's a Trojan horse, because if I take that offer, I will not be able to implement many of the things that I've been talking to you about. It means I have to now succumb to the norms and the values of my newfound political party, and that makes it impossible for me to deliver on the promises that I've made. I will not be able to make the books public. I will not be able to be accountable to the people in the way I'd like to be accountable to. So that makes it difficult. I wouldn't be open to that kind of Greek gift, if you asked me. However, I think it's important to also make this point. Now, Nigerians must be ready to put their monies where their mouth is, for them to have the moral right to hold people to account. There's an exciting young politician in New York who just won the mayoral candidacy. There's a video of his that I love so much where he was begging people to stop sending him money, that they've reached the limits, just send your monies back. They've hit the milestone that they wanted. 18,000 people had donated to his candidacy, right? The reverse is the case here. People, the moment you have a billboard or a poster, they want to take from you. So if everywhere I go, people are constantly taking from me, and nobody is willing to support my dream or support my vision, what happens at the end of the day when you're not offered something on the other side of the aisle? So I'm saying this so that people realize the role that they play that makes it easy for politicians to jump ship when the opportunity comes or presents itself is largely because you were never participatory. You never supported those politicians. And, when push comes to shove and they look at the big picture and they say to themselves, after all, what have I been? I've been funding this whole thing my whole self. I have to take care of myself and my family. So if they offer me a commissioner position here or a ministerial position, I might as well take it. Because after all, what do the people at home care? They also want to keep taking from me. And the funny thing is that we have enough people who are able to fund alternative candidates in this country, but they're just not interested.
So you're speaking specifically, to people here in Eti Osa Local Government area.
It's also specific. You wouldn't believe that not a single estate that we've tried to approach to have a conversation with residents in that estate have embraced our offer. I didn't say endorse me as a candidate. I did not say promote me or fund me as a candidate. I'm saying listen to what I want to offer this local government. And don't just listen to me. Invite the candidate of the APC, invite the candidate of the Labour Party. It's your it's your local government. That's where you live. Why wouldn't you want to be interested in the people that are going to be controlling at least 2 billion a month of your resources? It's shocking, but that's the reality. People have just completely zoned out. And so tomorrow, when there's a headline announcement that says, oh, former youth party candidate, for instance, now is now in the APC. He sold out. Sold to where? Where were you in anywhere in my journey? Where?
So we have to wrap up the conversation quickly, but I have two questions I want to ask you. One, away from the elections, and another, we're going to speak to, why people should come out on Saturday, July 11th to vote, especially, you're here. You spoke about the ADC.
Yes.
The coalition.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? This is a party that now involves a lot of big wigs from the PDP, from the Labour Party. What do you think? How can you wrap this up in 30 seconds about the ADC coalition?
Not to give you too much information or let the cat out of the bag, but I must tell you that, they toasted us first, right? We've had conversations with many of these people that you're talking about, and, our platform was one of those that they wanted to use at the time, but we just could not agree on certain things, right? Talking about value alignment again.
So there's no involvement. Your party is not in any way involved
so
with the ADC.
At the moment, we're not officially involved.
Something that can be considered, though.
We don't. Of course, we're not in aversion to what they are doing. We're not in aversion to coalitions, right? And if there's value alignment, it's a conversation that the party leadership may be willing to have, But at the moment, there's no official alignment with the ADC, like I rightfully said. But, we're not averse to such kinds of coalition because, like rightfully, it's not a merger. It's just simply a coalition.
All right. As we wrap up the conversation, the elections happen this Saturday. Speak to the people listening. Why should they come out to vote? Why should they do this? I haven't seen what has happened over the last couple of years here in Lagos. I mean, in 30 seconds, how would you wrap this up?
Would I like people to come out and vote for a new vision for Eti Osa? I want people to make a statement to the establishment that they deserve better. And my candidacy provides a platform where people can express their grievances and sort of stoke it in the face of the establishment to tell them and remind them, of their failures, and whatever happens on Saturday, when there are hundreds and thousands of young people who go to the polling booths on Saturday to register their displeasure and to vote for a new voice and a new vision and a bold vision for Eti Osa. It will send a strong signal that, times have changed and there's a new sheriff in town and there are a new set of Nigerians who will no longer tolerate mediocrity, who will no longer sit for the status quo. I believe strongly that we can pull off an upset. I've looked at the numbers and I think we can pull off an upset. And I want people to be disgusted by the fact that the APC candidates wants to lead them but does not see them worthy enough to speak to them. And that should be insulting to every resident. That should be insulting to every business. And to say you cannot lead us if you're not willing to engage us. And to that extent, should be willing to put their lot, for a political party that have sold a compelling vision that is people-centric, and that will live and transform the lives of people in this local government.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Ayodele Adio. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
All right. The Youth Party candidate for the Eti Osa Chairmanship Local Government elections happening this Saturday, July 12th. As we wrap this up, I want to quickly go right into Jay's take. Now, we know the elections happen this Saturday. I mean, I know, like you, I understand the situation. Not a lot of people believe in local government when it comes to Nigeria, when it comes to Lagos. But would we just sit down? Would we just say there's nothing I can do? Would we just sleep in our beds? Or would we come out and vote and say, you know what, amidst all that is happening, I still want my voice to be heard? It's your choice. You have to make that choice. And that choice happens on Saturday, July 12th. This is Jay's Take. Thank you so much for joining us on Jay on Air. We have this Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 to 7 p.m. So make sure you make it a date next week, Wednesday.